want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put into this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And he said, I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change. A carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. A carrot in the pot of boiling water called prison goes in hard but becomes soft. You don't want to be the carrot. An egg in the same pot of boiling water goes in with a soft liquid inside. But in the water, the liquid inside becomes hardened. He said, like your heart becomes hardened when you become an egg. The coffee bean in the same pot of boiling water changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. He said it's the only thing that can change the water. The eggs are changed by the water, the carrots are changed by the water, but the coffee bean changes the water because it is the change agent. He said it's the agent of change, and it'll change the water because the power is inside the coffee bean. And he said, just like the power's inside you. The power's inside you to change that pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And he tells me, if you want to come back on the other side of this thing and as someone your parents recognize, then you have to change the prison from the inside out. You have to be the change you want to see in the world you're going into.
First of all, we are the energy we put out into the world. And what we have to learn is if we go into the world with that positive energy, other people are going to be attracted to it. And that's all you're saying. I think so many times people just forget one simple fix in the morning is be the energy you want to put out into the world and receive, and you'll get it back. So I gave you a couple quick things, but I'm going to give our listeners this just because I think that it's valuable. I've read a ton of your stuff. I listened to a couple of podcasts you've been on. I'm super excited because there's so many things that correlate in my life to yours. And when you get put in front of people in your life that are similar, there's a familiarity, a family feel to this. And so your high energy, maybe ADHD, just like I am. Your conduct grades were suspect in Catholic school. Mine were as well. It was always my biggest contention. We were altar servers. Your mom was devout as a Catholic. Your dad has been practicing. Mine goes every single weekend to church, and my dad has never converted, says he doesn't need to because he's more of a Catholic than most people that he knows. But the reality—
I love that. I love that, man. Dude, we're going to talk about that a little bit too.
Yeah, we'll talk about that. I love that. My dad is very disciplined. You were on the sidelines to the Cowboys games in the 90s that I was watching, and people that I idolize, from Jimmy Johnson as a coach to those guys. And the story is just amazing. Your mother has reminders, your ability to read body language, your financial services career, your ability to make sure all men are treated equal, not just created equal, and your faith and your rebirth. And so I wrote a lot of words down, but other than that, I'm going to shut up and let you take it from here. And you just tell a little bit of your story to give the listeners the impact, because I think that's what really goes in when someone hears where you started and where you came from to where you are today. It changes everything. And we got to talk about the coffee bean before the end of the podcast today.
No, we absolutely will. This is great. And what you've just done, by the way, for everybody listening to this, what Scott has done is his homework. Before he gets into a conversation with somebody, he did the background on it. And now the person that he's in the conversation with, me, is so pumped up and super excited because the person sitting across from me took the time to get to know me when they reached out to me. And this doesn't happen like this all the time, Scott. I do a lot of podcasts and it's not always like this. So, dude, thank you for what you've just done. You just showed your audience one of the best tools, because we're all in sales. Everybody is in sales. Everybody, every time you meet somebody, it's sales. And you have shown somebody one of the most basic and fundamental things. This is an easy way to separate yourself with the rest of society. And it takes very little effort to do. It takes no talent to have to go and look up and research somebody, right? Because that just takes a little bit of your time. And you have separated yourself from a lot of other podcasters just already in the first 5 minutes, dude. So, valuable lesson. Anybody listening, stick to that right there. So now that you've given the background, because you did so much great research, you've given the background, I think probably the best place to start this conversation off is probably July 30th, 2008, 14 years ago. I'm sitting on this dirty old couch in this dirty old apartment in Dallas, Texas, and I've got my meth dealer sitting next to me. And I'm telling my meth dealer, man, you don't want to be here. The cops are closing in on me. 10 days before this, my partner in crime, a guy named Dustin, my partner in crime had been picked up by the Dallas Police Department in a stolen car. And he's been my partner for over 3 years now. in this burglary ring called the Uptown Burglaries. And it was for the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas that this crime spree was going in on. And I'm the top criminal in this criminal organization. There's a pyramid, let's say. They showed the pyramid at trial. It's one of those pyramids that has everybody's face on it, and yours truly is at the top of the pyramid. So I'm the top guy, the shot caller the cops are looking for. They've got my partner in crime. And let me tell you something about crime that I learned. Everybody talks. Everybody talks, Scott. I mean, look.
It's not just in crime, Damon. It's probably everything in life. Everybody talks, right?
Everything in life, everybody talks. Just know that going into anything you do, any transactional, any kind of conversation, relationships, everybody talks. And so I know they're going to close in on me because they've got my partner in crime in custody. And man, as I'm telling this story to text, the window blows out, the flashbang grenade is stumbling across the floor. It goes off in my face. And when I came to and I can see and hear again, there's cops swarming everywhere. There's a cop's got his boot on my chest, barrel of an assault rifle in my eye socket, and he's screaming, "Don't move, don't move." And man, one of the cops screams out loud, "We got him. We got the Uptown Burglar." And that's a name I'll live with for the rest of my life. About a dozen other meth addicts and myself, young and old, male and female, black and white, and everything in between, indiscriminately and without reservation, broke into the homes of dozens and dozens of people in the Uptown neighborhood of Dallas to feed our insatiable meth habits. And I tell people this about the meth side of it because my crime was engaging in organized criminal activity to commit burglary of habitation. And all my crimes were centered around meth because I was a drug addict. Addiction affects everybody in this country, Scott, whether you're the addict, the family member of an addict, the friend of an addict, the victim of an addict, or the taxpayer. You're just paying into this overburdened criminal justice system that has no idea how to handle the disease of addiction. Addiction affects every person in this country. And that day on July 30th, 2008, a Dallas SWAT team didn't just arrest me, they rescued me. My angels in life didn't have wings. They had assault rifles, shields, and helmets. They came through the windows. They busted down my door to pull me out of the world that I was in. And I really think, Scott, God sent them after me to pull me out of that world. And with this idea that, okay, Damon West, I'm about to break you down and put you through this one hell of an ordeal. But if you're willing to let me drive this car and trust me and have faith in what we're about to do, then you're going to come out the other side of this thing and you're going to be the inspiration. You're going to be the proof that I exist. And I'm not trying to get too philosophical or too religious on you on this, but I tell people all the time that God doesn't set bushes on fire anymore. That's a very Old Testament kind of thing. God sets people on fire, and every one of us gets to be this person if we're willing to allow God to do his role and we do our role. And that was the beginning of a journey, of a saga that took me through Dallas County Jail for about a year to a long 6-day trial where the jury comes back in 10 minutes with their punishment after a 6-day trial, 10-minute deliberation. And then, I mean, they came back and they sentenced me to life in prison, 65 years in a Texas prison, which 65 is life in Texas. And my journey began. I mean, the day that the SWAT team took me in and the day of my sentencing are 2 days I'll never forget, because that was those fork in the road moments in life. And there's a couple more fork in the roads that I went on that I think are very pivotal to this story. And one of them was as a broker at UBS. We were just talking off air about the fact that you're a broker. I was a broker. By the way, how was the Series 7 to 63, man? How'd you do on those?
I did fine, but I started from scratch. I mean, when I was 21 years old, I actually was working in politics. I was appointed as assistant director of crime prevention in the state of Virginia, and I was working for the AG. And he lost the governor's job, and I didn't have another job. I forgot to write that down as another similarity, our political backgrounds. But the reality was, I had an aunt that called me and she said, "You need to do this for a living. Like, you will be great at this because your ability to connect with people is what all the people I see being trained can't do. All they do is sell, but they're only transaction based. They're not relationship based." And so the quick version and long story to that quick question is, man, I started from scratch. I started studying from zero. I didn't know anything. We didn't have any money growing up. And so that was an interesting dynamic. So I looked at it this way. If I failed, I learned how to manage my own money, or I got a head start. And so, 20 plus years later, I've been able to build something pretty special and help a lot of people. But I learned that I was helping them on the relationship side. The money was a byproduct of that. It was life first, wealth second. And so anyway, you were at UBS. You get this job, and I want you to. Yeah, my story is boring. Your story is so much
No,
more
man,
interesting.
but what you just said is so important, man, about the relationship building. You're dropping nuggets out here, man. You're dropping a lot of wisdom. The relationship building part of it, man, because the money is about, you're an entrepreneur. I'm an entrepreneur. I love what you said earlier in the conversation before we were on air, that you're an entrepreneur who happens to also be a financial advisor, right? I mean, you're not, your thing in life is that you're an entrepreneur, and which means you have to build relationships if you want to be successful at whatever you're doing. And those relationships, when done right, the byproduct is the success in your field, whether it be money or whatever else it is. But I think that's so important for people to understand, that when you go with the intent to serve other people, you're looking for ways that, how can I best serve the person across from me? Everything else kind of takes care of itself. And this goes with, whether you're in business, your social media platforms. You want to be successful creating a social media platform, find ways to serve the people that come to your page. How can I best serve the other people? What can I give? What can I deliver to other people? So, dude,
hey,
I
Damon,
love it, man.
One quick thing. I think a word that people get confused about is the difference between investment and cost. And when you talk about relationships, you can look at a relationship as cost, which is just a transaction. I can go in the room like you did later in life. We're going to talk about at some point in time, and you can work the room. You could fail 7 times, and the 8th time you could succeed. But it wasn't the cost. It was the investment that we put into ourselves, the investment that we put into the relationships with the people that we meet. Do you really give a damn about the person sitting across from you? Every single guest that we interview, if I take the investment to put into you, you're going to give me your best stuff every single time, because that's how investment works. Investments pay dividends. Costs and transactions don't pay anything but empty promises and feelings.
Absolutely. And look, I mean, and I'd rather just hold on to my money if we're just going to just talk about cost and, talk about cost. I'd rather make an investment if we're going to do something. So
I love it.
Let's put it where it goes. So speaking of investment, let's go just dovetail in 2004. I'm working at UBS, and I'm in the training phase to be a broker. And I was just a political fundraiser for a presidential candidate named Dick Gephardt in 2004. And I had this book of business, man, billionaires and millionaires from all over the country that I raised money from. And so a guy at UBS that's recently passed away named Charlie Eldemeyer, he was a friend of my dad's. He's like, hey, if Damon's got that kind of book of business, come on over to UBS and let's turn him into a broker. So I'm at UBS, and I'm in that phase where I'm studying for my Series 7, Series 63. And I'm passed out of sleep at work one day in 2004. This other broker comes up, and he's a full broker already, man. And I've been working with him, and so he's gotten to spend a little time with me, sees me sleeping. He's freaked out, man. And I remember it's just like his intensity. He's like, you can't sleep on this kind of job, dude. I mean, the markets are open. You're messing people's money, He said, they'll fire you if they catch you sleeping here. He said, come on down to the parking garage. I got something that'll pick you up. And so I go down to the parking garage. And at this point in my life in 2004, I'm an alcoholic. I'm a drug addict. Cocaine is my drug of choice at this time. And I'm pretty much open to anything. And that mindset of being open to anything opened me up for an entrance into the world of methamphetamines. And meth, it's the most evil, most destructive, most addictive drug. I smoked it one time and I was instantly hooked just like that. And I couldn't give everything away fast enough for that drug, because addicts, Scott, give things away. Now, addicts, and when I'm talking about addicts, I'm not just talking about drugs and alcohol right here.
It's anything.
I'm talking about anything you could be addicted to that takes you away from the most important things in life. This could be drugs, alcohol, food, money, sex, the internet, Instagram, shopping, gambling, whatever it is. Here's addiction 101 in a nutshell. Addicts give up their goals to meet their behaviors. Normal people, focused people, successful and driven people, they'll give up their behaviors to meet their goals, but not an addict. You see, addicts, we have a very simple three-part thought process. This is addiction in a nutshell. Addicts have a thought. Let's say it's to drink or do drugs. Or in my case, after I touched meth for the first time, the thought is in my head, I want more of that. Addicts have a thought. Then it becomes an obsession. We obsess over it. And then it becomes physical. We put in thought, obsession, physical. And so when I touched meth for the first time, it was such an instant addiction that all I did was obsess over it. And that's what I did. I threw my entire life away. I gave everything away for that drug, my job, my home. Go ahead.
I want to interrupt you for just a second, because what I find so interesting about the story is, for the listeners, and we're doing a shortened version today, so I want to make sure everybody gets your story. You had been drinking alcohol since you were a preteen. You had really functioned, high functioning cocaine addict. And you did, which a lot of people in business do. This is a high performance conversation. And the thing about addiction that's so important is so many high performers mistake performance for addiction. Like they get confused between performing, and you kept doing the next thing to be able to stay functioning. And so as you're asleep at work and you take us there, your brother was into meth at the time, I believe. Was it Grayson?
Yeah, Grayson. Yeah, absolutely.
And so you had said, I'm never touching this white trash drug. You go in and you're basically now in a position where you need to function to keep your job and keep the bull crap life that you've created that's on this house of cards alive. And you've killed it. Like, you've done it better than anybody, because anything you've ever done, you've actually done pretty great based on the storyline that I've read and the background that I've noticed. And obviously it's the same as what we're going to get to, what you're doing great now. But so you're in the car, you touch it, you need more. Now what?
Man, now it's like, okay, now I'm focused on, it's like this. You've hit on something very important about my personality, and I'm assuming your personality. I mean, and I can see it already. You're ADHD just like me, but when you get focused on something, you get your teeth into something, it's
laser.
Done. It's happening. It's going down. This is happening right now. This is good whenever you're focused on something good, whenever you've got a good path in life, whenever you're devoted to something that's wholesome, spiritual, helpful, unselfish. But man, if you get your teeth into something poisonous, something evil like meth, it goes really the other direction fast. And so this Series 7, these tests that I had to take, those took a back seat, man. I'm only focused on getting high. And at first when I do it, Scott, I think it's a miracle drug, man. I'm up for 4 days, man. This is great. I'm getting all this work done. But brother, what goes up must come down. And I started coming down. And when I came down, I had to have more. I had to have more. And then, like you said, you described it really well, a house of cards. What happened with the meth is I pulled out that bottom card on the house of cards, and everything else came crumbling down. But it doesn't happen just right away. And when you're in your addiction, you don't want to see the damage that's going on in your life. You'll ignore it. You'll put it to the side. You'll say, hey, I can still manage this, you know. But my life is cratering around me, but all I can think about is getting high. I can't pull myself out of this because the obsession to get high is so strong. I lose my job because Charlie Eldemeyer can't save me anymore. Charlie Eldemeyer's like, hey, Damon, you failed the Series 7. By the way, I failed it, man. I got like 66 on the Series 7 test, man. So I failed the Series 7. He can't keep me on. He knows something's wrong. He asked me, is everything okay? And I'm like, I'm great. And as soon as I left Charlie's office and they escorted me out, because, you know, you're not going back to your computer after that. I got my box of stuff. I put my box of stuff in my car. First phone call I make is to my dealer. Hey, man, I'm coming by to pick up some stuff. I got off work early today. I got off work early. I got fired, dude.
You're still lying. You lie to yourself. You'll lie to yourself just to actually keep the lie going.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I didn't just get off work early. I got off work permanently, man. But it didn't matter to me. I had money in my savings account. I'll be fine. I'll find another job. But that was it. That was the last job, real job I ever had until I got out of prison in 2015 and started working for the Provost Law Firm. This is 11 years later when I get my first real job again, because in that time period from 2004 to 2015, I'm going to go on a crime spree in the city of Dallas, where I become the public enemy number one for these burglaries that are going on in the uptown neighborhood of Dallas, I become the guy they're going after. And, 2008, 3 years into the crime spree, I get picked up by the Dallas SWAT team. A year later, they sentenced me to life in prison. And it was in that time, here's another fork in the road in life. The fork in the road we just went on is UBS, touched meth for the first time. 18 months later, I'm living on the streets and I'm homeless and I could become a criminal. So the life of crime is over. I've been sentenced to life in prison, May 18th, 2009, another fork in the road. After the trial is over, they sentence me to life. They bring me to the side, this little side room. They bring my parents to the other side. It's a bulletproof glass right there. And my mom has this conversation with me. She tells me, Damon, you can't get into one of these white hate groups, one of these Aryan Brotherhood type of gangs. You were never raised to be a racist. You're not going to start now. And she said, no gangs, no tattoos. She said, that's the rule. She said, you come back as the man we raised or don't come back at all. Scott, man, I don't know if you've ever, I don't know if you ever looked at a prison show or prison movies or anything like that, but
many times
are tatted up, man. And the gang stuff is through the roof. And I'm going to the worst part of the prison system where everybody's got life, the hardest part of prison. And my mom has just laid down, drawn this line in the sand. She's like, do you understand this debt you're going to pay? You come back as the man we raised or don't come back at all. This means that if I become like the prison, which is the norm into a prison, especially an environment like that for a guy like me, I can't come home. I don't have a home to come back to. Without this conversation, I don't have this hammer hanging over my head, or maybe more aptly would be to define it as a sword hanging over my head that'll chop my head off because I want to go home one day. Now, I don't know how I'm going to keep this promise I made to my mom on May 18, 2009, because in the 2-month period from when I'm waiting on the prison transport bus to come pick me up after my trial, I run into this guy in Dallas County Jail named Mr. Jackson, this older black man.
All right, hold on. Before you go to Mr. Jackson, I have one question. I'm sorry, because I know we're on a time restraint, but I want to talk this through real quick. I want parents to listen to this one thing because it can feel empty and lost when you are practicing and doing the things that you know are right, even when the people around you aren't. And your mom held the line, and the line didn't work until this fork in the road. When she looked at you, weren't ready to listen to that message until that day. She'd been saying the same message over and over again, but you weren't ready to actually be open to it. Maybe God hadn't made you open to it yet, but you were open in that moment. And I just wanted to make that comment because that's all I could think about is how many times as parents do we say, I listened to your Ed Milet podcast the other day with my kids in the car as we were going to a soccer tournament as I was researching for this. And my son was asking me, my 13-year-old was asking me questions about your life. When are you interviewing him, Dad? What's that going to be like? And why do you think he made that decision? And the line that mom drew in the sand gave you a standard that they had always had, but you hadn't followed. And I feel like that has attracted you to people in your life that are always maybe the best at what they do. That line was a standard though. And I was so impressed by your mom's power and her ability to keep functioning. I know parents are imperfect, but at the end of the day, that was a great moment.
Yeah, no, I think that's a terrific observation, first of all. And that's cool that your kid was listening to it too, man. Anytime someone will share my message with their child, that's like the greatest compliment in the world because we want the best for our kids. Happened to me not too long ago. This lady reached out to me on Instagram and she said, hey, you don't know me, but my dad said that you just shared your message with his team. And he's sending me the video of it because he said, I need to hear your story. And so I'm looking forward to hearing this message. That woman is Nick Saban's daughter. So whenever I got done speaking to Alabama that night, his daughter reached out to me on Instagram through the message portal to tell me that my dad just called me on the way home from work. The best college football coach in history, arguably, told his daughter, we had this guy come talk to the team, and this is a message you need to hear. You telling me that you have your son doing that, greatest compliment in the world, man.
Both boys listened. One fell asleep, the oldest, the 16-year-old, but he listened to more. He just can't ever tell me he's listening, but the youngest one was listening. And I'm telling you, it's moments like that when you're doing this and you don't get, you will bust your butt and you will work. But in the space that you're in today, you will often not get a lot of big wins. You get little victories along the way. And just knowing someone's helping to spread the word or listen or do something in a company or whatever it may be, it does make a difference. So Mr. Jackson is who you meet in the county jail while you're waiting. Am I correct?
Absolutely. And this is like a good spot to I tell people all the time that messengers in life, God never just reached down and put his hand on my head and said, Damon, you're healed. It didn't work out like that for me, Scott. What God has done is put people in my life. And in my life, these people, they look different. I mean, from different times, wherever you are on the road of life. My mom and my dad, there were certainly people that God has put in my life. Teachers, coaches, people in the community of Port Arthur that helped raise me. As I got older and went down different roads, people came at me from different angles and that looked different than me. One of them is this Black Muslim man in Dallas County Jail. There's going to be other ones throughout my story, but here's the key. You have to be receptive to all of God's messengers to receive all of God's messages. And God's not just going to pick people that look like you, that believe the same as you, that come from the same background as you. In fact, He's going to pick a lot of people that don't have anything in common with you, because this is the way we become the best versions of ourselves, and we become accepting of people for their differences, because strength is in our diversity. Some of the best lessons we learn in life are from people that have been down a road that we don't necessarily want to go down, like Nick Saban. Nick Saban told me, Damon, good players learn from their own mistakes and great players learn from the mistakes of others. So there's Mr. Jackson. We could call him Coach Jackson, like Coach Saban. Mr. Jackson, Dallas County Jail, this older Black Muslim man. He pulls me aside. He's telling me that prison is going to be like a pot of boiling water. He's telling me the dynamic in prison about race. The gangs run everything. So you have to fight all the white gangs first. Then you'll fight the black gangs. Then you can earn the right to walk alone if you establish yourself. And he tells me this really important thing about fighting, because he said you're going to do a lot of fighting, but just remember this: you don't have to win all your fights. You just have to fight all your fights. You don't have to win all your fights, but you have to fight all your fights. This is great, Scott. This means that some days we're going to win and some days we're going to lose. And it doesn't matter whether or not I win or lose. What matters is, do I get back up? And this is true in life. No one counts your wins and losses but you. You're the one that watches that kind of stuff. But people do watch to see, hey, that person got knocked down. Did they get back up? And as long as you keep getting back up and keep facing your adversity every single day, you're winning. You're always winning. But when he tells me this in 2009, look, I'm stunned, man. I just, the amount of violence and terror that he's telling me I'm walk into. And that's when he said, let me break it down for you a different way. He said, I want you to imagine prison as a pot of boiling water. He said, anything we put into this pot of boiling water is going to be changed by the heat and the pressure inside that pot. And he said, I'm going to put 3 things in this pot of boiling water and watch how they change: a carrot, an egg, and a coffee bean. So here's where I first heard the story of the coffee bean. It was the summer of 2009 in Dallas County Jail, exactly 10 years before John Gordon and I wrote the book, The Coffee Bean, in the summer of 2019. This is the origin story where it came from. And so he's telling me a carrot in the pot of boiling water called prison goes in hard but becomes soft, gets beat, gets robbed, gets raped, may get killed. You don't want to be the carrot. An egg in the same pot of boiling water goes in with a soft liquid inside. But in the water, the liquid inside becomes hardened. He said, like your heart becomes hardened when you become an egg. You become incapable of giving or receiving love. And he said, if you're incapable of giving or receiving love in the place you're going to, you're institutionalized and you don't come back as someone your parents recognize. And then he told me, he said, the coffee bean in the same pot of boiling water changes the pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. He said, it's the only thing that can change the water, by the way. The eggs are changed by the water. The carrots are changed by the water. But the coffee bean changes the water because it is the change agent. He said, it's the agent of change, and it'll change the water because the power is inside the coffee bean. And he said, just like the power is inside you. The power is inside you to change that pot of boiling water into a pot of coffee. And he tells me, if you want to come back on the other side of this thing and as someone your parents recognize, then you have to change the prison from the inside out. You have to be the change you want to see in the world you're going into. And the last words this man ever said to me, the last 4 words he ever spoke, he said, be a coffee bean. And that's my slogan. That's my motto that I have in life. Because from that day on, I picked up a message that anybody that's 5 to 95 years old can fully grasp and understand, because we understand the physical changes that happen to these three things in a pot of boiling water. It's something we can see even as a child. When I've talked to younger kids, and they get it, man, because they've done, they've made hard-boiled eggs at Easter time with their moms or their guardians, whoever watches over them. They understand the concept of it. And that message hit me when I got it in 2009. And I thought to myself, man, if I can harness this power inside me, it doesn't matter what environment I go into, no matter what adversity, no matter what prison I have to go into in life, I won't just survive. I could thrive if I kept the power inside me. And that was the message that really turned it around for me, Scott. Because prison was a pot of boiling water. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through. I tell people all the time, the only language everybody speaks in prison is violence. Man, violence is the only language you become fluent in. Either you speak violence or someone speaks it to you, but you become fluent in violence. And where I went to, the part of prison I had to go to where the life sentence people go, it was the most dangerous part of prison. Partly because the reason why the life sentence building is so dangerous is because there's people that have lost hope. A lot of people have lost hope. Hope is so important in life. It's like this. Hey, have you seen Shawshank? You ever watch the movie Shawshank?
Yeah. Great movie.
Great movie. So, and here's the question I ask people. When you watch Shawshank, do you think it's a show about Andy Dufresne, Tim Robbins' character? Is it about him, or is it about Red, Morgan Freeman's character? And there's no right or wrong answer, but when I watch it after going through prison, I think it's Red's story. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's Red's story, not Andy's story. Now, Red is narrating, and he's talking about this Andy Dufresne guy, but Red is a dead man. Red is a dead man because Red has lost hope. And it's like when Brooks got out on parole. Remember, Brooks gets out, he's out, it lasts a couple of weeks, and he hangs himself, works at the grocery store. He hangs it. He's an old man, can't function in the real world again. He writes the letter back to the guys on the inside. Red even turns to Andy. He says, Andy, I'm an institutional man. I don't know if I could hack it out there. He even says the words to Andy. Hope is a dangerous thing. Imagine living in a world where you feel like hope is a dangerous thing. We all need hope, Scott. Everybody has to have hope. And if you lose hope, it's the darkest world to be in, because anything can take hope's place. And usually it's not something good. But Andy tells Red, get busy living or get busy dying. And so Shawshank, to me, after living in a prison and going through a very similar experience to what's in the movie, Shawshank is about Red. It's Red's story because he's telling the story about the guy that saved his life, because Andy gave Red life again. Hope is something we all must have. And when I lived in a world where there was a lack of hope, it was a very evil, very dark place. But I was able to come in there as this positive light. But by the way, Jackson told me, you are going to be a light that people want to extinguish, because that world doesn't want a light in there. They want it to be dark in there.
You've always been that light. So the thing is I think, what I find interesting again is the fork in the road is you just identified through the story that you've always been a coffee bean and a change agent. You had to change to start being a change agent for good, because you had been a change agent for the things that weren't good. Like so many people that make destructive decisions in their lives, and so many of our listeners are the same people, but there's a pinnacle moment, and you made that adjustment. And so not only have you made the change agent, can you take us through, I just want to hear a brief portion of the spiritual awakening, because in prison, I'm going to fast forward a couple things. Number one, you find AA, you find Ray, you find people that help you identify that you're an addict and you're always going to be an addict. It's not just something that you're going to happen to step away from, or you're not using drugs. And so you can't just be good in prison. When you get out, you're going to always have these problems. So the AA is there. You also start attending the chapel. You also start going back to church. You also get back to some of the basics. I believe that life is, the high performance life is based in 4 categories. Life stands for love, impact, faith, and energy. Love is who shows up, who is the most important people in your life. How are you devoting your time and energy to that? Number 2 is impact. It's everything you stand for. It's literally what you do every day. It's your what. Faith is your is your what, it's your why. It's something bigger than yourself. So for everyone listening, it doesn't have to be God for you, but it's got to be something bigger than yourself, because that ego will kill you. And last is your energy, how you show up. Your story takes me through all of those areas. You focused on who was most important, mom. You decided you're going to make an impact in any room you went in. You worked on yourself every day, getting up 8 hours a day in the law, or 8 hours a day in studying yourself or reading books. So I just want to take us through a couple of minutes of that rebirth, and then take me out of your story on how you get out, because that's important. And I want to make sure our listeners get to hear it today.
This is great. This is going to be a great way to like bring this plane and land it, man. So the spiritual awakening you're talking about, several guys in prison would say this right here, because you hear spiritual. Some people don't know how to differentiate spiritual from religion. Religion and spirituality are two very different things. The best definition I've heard of this was in prison, where guys would say religion is for people who have never been to hell and don't want to go. Spirituality is for people who have been to hell and don't want to go back. And that's what I found in prison. I had a spiritual awakening. I went into hell on earth, and I had to form a better relationship with my higher power. And I say that because there's people of all different faiths that listen to your show. And I want them to understand whatever faith you believe in, that's great. You believe in that, whatever your higher power is. I'm a Christian, so mine's Christ. And so when I talk about my higher power, it's Christ. But in this program recovery I got into called AA, it allows you to pick your higher power. But here's the rule. Pick your higher power, then you surrender the higher power. You got to surrender. You got to surrender this idea of control, because there's only 4 things we have control over in life. This is part of the problem with addicts, man. We want to control all these variables around us. Can't happen. It's delusional thinking. We control 4 things. You control what you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. What you think, what you say, what you feel, and what you do. So once you surrender your control of that, then you can start working. You can apply your time. Your time is the most precious resource you have. We talk about in the world of investments that you work in now, that I used to work in, things like commodities, oil, gas, wheat, whatever, gold, silver. The most valuable commodity is time, because once time is gone, it's gone for good. You can't replace the stuff. So now you're focusing your time in the 4 areas you can actually impact and change. And in this program recovery, now you're going to start doing things like working a personal inventory. You're going to find out what your resentments are in life, what your fears are. And you're going to find out what role you play in all your problems.
Because you have to go backwards. You have to go backwards to go forward. The bottom line is
you have to go backwards to go forward. We got to
go forward.
To keep our side of the street clean. We got to figure out how it got dirty in the first place.
Yep.
And what I say is, what role do I play in all my problems? We have this axiom in AA. Whenever I am disturbed, there's something wrong with me. Whenever I am disturbed, there's something wrong with me. That means I play a role in all my, if something disturbs me, I play a role in that disturbance somewhere. And I got to figure out what my role is. And once I figure that out, that's the part that I can fix. That's the part that I can change. That is the one part I can control of my problem, is the role I play. For an example, I had this big resentment against Judge Snipes, the guy that was the judge on my trial. We used to hang out. I knew the guy from a former life before I was a criminal and he was a judge. And I expected to be treated better. I had these expectations on other people, which, by the way, this is a whole nother conversation.
Yeah.
Setting expectations.
Lower your expectations.
It's a very dangerous thing, man, because people are going to let you down, man, and your expectations may not be realistic. This is part of the problem, my resentment that I had against Judge Snipes. Now, resentments are very important to keep track of in a program recovery. The number one offender for any addict is a resentment, because a resentment will send you back out again fast. And so my resentment—
Isn't a resentment just another excuse? I mean, a resentment is just another excuse as to why you could do the bad things you've been doing. It's just leaning on the wrong thing.
Absolutely. And it's resentment. The opposite of resentment is forgiveness. And so my resentment against Judge Snipes, I found out through AA, I had no reason to resent Judge Snipes, because here's the deal. I committed crimes. I violated the social contract that we have in this country that says if you obey the rules, you get to live in the society out here. When I did all of that, I ended up in a courtroom where a guy sitting up there on the bench is the guy that I used to drink beers with and party with on the lake. But now I've committed crimes and I put myself in his power, and he can do whatever he needs to do or wants to do at that point. But it was my fault. That's the role I play. So once I understood that, I let go of my resentment against Snipes. by the way, the biggest resentment I had to deal with when I worked my 12 steps was me. I had more resentment against me. Man, if somebody would have done to my family the pain that I caused my family, if someone would have caused my family that kind of pain, I'd kill him, Scott. I'd kill him. But I'm not going to kill myself. So I've got to figure out how to forgive myself, because I'm in a crucible moment, and I've got to figure out how to forgive myself, because like you said, it's just that excuse. If I hold on to this resentment against me, then I can go out and get high and get drunk because I'm miserable, I'm mad, So I had to learn how to get.
You also knew, I'm sorry to interrupt, you also knew how great you were inside. So the biggest, hardest thing to resolve is when you know that what's inside of you is meant to be something bigger. And what you've done is you flipped it to the wrong side. You knew inside of you that you were put on this earth to do bigger and better things, and you did it everywhere you went. But sometimes that had to be challenging, where you knew not only were you frustrating your family, but when you break yourself inside, that's challenging. That's knowing that talent was there. You were great at whatever you put your mind to.
Yeah, absolutely. But when I worked at Program Recovery, I became a better person. I'm gonna tell you something to wrap that up. So Ray, the guy I meet in prison that brings the 12-step program into the Styles unit is in Beaumont, which is where I live now, right outside of Beaumont. And the first day I'm out of prison, November 16, 2015, I made parole. That's how the story of me going to prison. 7 years, 3 months, 18 days into prison. The parole board comes to see me. They've seen the change that I've made. They've seen the entire process that I'm a coffee bean. They let me go. Now I'm on parole for the rest of my life, which is part of the reason why I was even late today. That I had to see my parole officer to get travel permits, because anytime I travel, I have to get permission to travel. But the first day I'm out, I go to my first AA meeting. Ray is there. It's his home group that he lives, the Spiritual Awakening of Sober Offenders group from prison is the group he leads. So Ray is there, and Ray becomes my sponsor in AA, and Ray has walked me through the process. And look, man, I've been locked up for a long time. One of the first things I want to do is I want to meet a girl. I mean, that's just like normal. It's just like your need for relationships and sex and stuff like that. That's a real thing when used the right way. It's not a bad thing, by the way.
Foundational. It's foundational. It's a drive.
There's three core human instincts that drive all of behavior. There's the instinct for social, want to belong and be accepted, for security, financial security to make ourselves feel like we are okay, and the need for sex, not in a bad way, but in a good way. We're meant to have relationships, and this is like three core. Everything in life that you are bothered by affects one or all three of these things. That's it.
This was the conversation in my marriage when we first got married. It wasn't very popular, by the way, but I said, if I'm ever upset, it's usually because of food, sex, or sleep. And that became a funny joke within our friends group, and my wife and we've been talking about it for many, many years. But the truth is, it's fundamental, and it's what drives so much of our human behavior. So you're out now. You have to figure this out. This is a big thing. Are you okay on time right now? Are you okay to keep going just for a couple more minutes? Okay.
Yeah, about 2 more minutes. Yeah. So I get out and look, and so I'm telling Ray, he's working through the 12 steps with me. This is like, I get out in November. This is like in December. I'm like, hey, dude, I'm ready to meet somebody. Like I've been locked up for a long time. And he said, you cannot do that. You can't hook up with any girls. You can't have any relationships. And I'm like, I'm getting mad at right now, because I've heard people in AA say, well, you got to wait 12 months and I'm like, dude, are you about to tell me I've got to wait 12 more months? He's like, no, you've got to work 12 more steps. He said, because when you get done working the 12 steps, one, you will be someone worthy of being in a relationship with. Now you'll be the best version of you to take into any relationship you go into, because a relationship, he said, is a two-way street. It's not about you. He said, second of all, now you can run that other person through the filter of what you learned in this program through those 12 steps and see if they are a good fit for you, if they've got your best interest in mind too. He said, so bear with me, work these 12 steps, and then go find a person you want to be with. And that's what I did, Scott. I mean, it was like, man, because if I wouldn't have done that, a lot of guys fall into that when they get right out of prison. They want to get going in life. They don't, but it's, again, It's allowing God to do his job and you do your job, you know?
Patience.
And
You had patience. You actually executed patience, something that you probably, if you're anything like me, have struggled with your entire life. But when we're patient, our best things come about. Like it just happens.
still struggle with it today, man.
Me
So,
too.
but the foundation I got through a 12-step program recovery, the story of the coffee bean, my mom's conversation with me, and you know, so many people have been put in my life. And Scott, I have this amazing life where I get to go around the world speaking and sharing my story now, write books. And it's just I feel I was telling John Gordon yesterday, we were on the phone talking. I was like, John, you know, I always thank John periodically for the life I have because he was the one that helped me get where I am more than anybody else. But I told John, I can't believe that this is my life, that I get to do this every single day. I get to serve and be a servant leader and impact people the way I do. So Scott, thanks for the day, man. And thanks for sharing with me that you brought this to your kids. That's a very big deal.
It's been awesome. Listen, to close this out, I just want to read one comment, because on the back of one of your books, John Gordon, Nick Saban, Jimmy Johnson, Dabo Sweeney wrote this: easily one of the top, most powerful messages I've ever heard. Unbelievable. A great story and very inspirational. I think everyone that's listened to this today has literally only got 1/4 of a story. And what I've learned about you in this short amount of time is the story's worth diving into because there's little nuggets of great opportunity throughout. So how do they find you if they want to find you? Number one, I want our listeners to find you, Damon.
Yeah,
Where do they go?
DamonWest.org, DamonWest.org. Social media is at Damon West 7. And my books are available anywhere books are sold. Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, anywhere books are sold.
Download Audible, listen to the coffee bean with your kids in the car. I guarantee it's worth the listen and it's life-changing. You're making an impact. And thanks for being on the show today.
Thanks a lot, Scott. I appreciate your time and I appreciate the work you put into it, brother.
Thanks, brother. I hope you enjoyed this podcast. If you liked it, there's more where this one came from. Click here and enjoy some more.